Newsfirst, Newsline.
Hello there, very good evening and welcome to another edition of Newsline Live, coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. We've been covering a lot on the economic woes of the general public here in Sri Lanka, and moreover a bird's eye view on the economic situation here in Sri Lanka, because that currently is the #1 concern on everybody's mind, despite other political drama that are happening on the sidelines. To discuss these matters and more, we've got with us an expert in the field of economics, Dr. Anil Jayanta. He is a member of the Economic Formulation Committee of the National Intellectuals Organization. He's also a lecturer on economics at the Sri Jayawardhanapura University. Very good evening, Professor. As always, thank you very much for coming on our show.
Very good evening to you.
Doctor, my first question to you really is the first question that I pose to a lot of economists that come on our show right now. When we speak about economic policy, we know that Sri Lanka is not a country that's very big on this whole idea of policy. But before we really get into identifying the nitty-gritties of this issue, let's try to kind of assess some of the main issues that Sri Lankan economy is suffering right now. We have one issue being the forex, the lack of reserves in Sri Lanka, which is affecting all aspects, including the depreciation of the rupee. And also we have the downgradings from Fitch. We haven't been downgraded any time recently, but they affirmed their downgrading and also cautioned that large banks are at risk of collapsing. Then we also have the issue of, well, debt, the eternal issue that Sri Lankans continue to face, the massive amount of debt that we have to repay. So, Doctor, on these grounds, how really bad, or how is the situation on these fronts?
Yeah, Shalan, actually the situation is really bad.
Let's take it piece by piece.
Yeah, so we can
any one of your choice.
Yeah, but just instead of just going into these theoretical aspects of this the economic dimensions, we better look at from the people's point of view. Like they may not sometimes just understand fights or just accusation about that and this and different twisting ideas and here and there. But actually they really face the difficulties and the hardships at this moment, especially when they go to the market. So that is reflected, all the bad decisions or the wrong policies are reflected finally in the prices of the commodities that they buy.
So you're saying the people wouldn't understand the complexities behind the thinking that goes into making a policy decision or a financial decision, but they will feel the consequences and suffer the consequences.
Exactly, they realize, especially in terms of prices, and again like the reduction in subsidies and all those things. So what we call in economic terms austerity measures. So even in this crisis situation, all the measures taken by ad hoc measures taken by the government has not really deprived the interest of the affluent class, but all those things have gone to the poor people, so that's why they are suffering. So that is one part. On the other hand, so this is indicative. Apart from other indicators such as GDP growth and forex issue, so there are so many issues, later we will touch it. But from the government appearances and the statement that they make and the ideas, so still we can see very clearly no one, like especially responsible people, no one knows what's really going on. That is why you see these differences, because one minister expresses totally two different ideas about. We'll take the simple example of rice importation of. So one minister says, so we need to import. There is a huge rice shortage in Sri Lanka. We don't have any option. But the other minister comes and says, no, we have adequate stock. Then, as far as the individuals of people are concerned, who want to believe in? So bit chaotic situation. It's a politically and economically, it's a turmoil situation. So this is valid for all the other areas as well. Even the foreign exchange, production, all those things. One says one thing, another one says something else. We are really, I just suspect whether they are purposefully confusing the general public. So this disagreement, because of that, if I just confuse you, then the general public might think, oh, which one is saying right or wrong, and they do not understand the real problem. Actually, what is the real problem? So they will not have adequate rice in future, or the prices of the rice and other essential commodities will go up. So we take the eyes off the ball, we look at these unnecessary fights.
Political
so that is
drama.
another dangerous. Yes, it's a drama now. So
well, one thing we see is that consecutive governments that come into power keep on creating this fantasy world to the general public, saying that we will give you this, we will give you that, we will make your lives great, we will make your lives better. Now, I understand this on the point of a sales pitch, as in to seek the vote of the general public. But in the end of the day, that is not the reality that we're looking at in the future. You spoke of austerity measures in the future. Given the current situation of the country that we're in right now, with the lack of information and all of that, do you believe that Sri Lanka can find a way out of this without the general public having to go through austerity measures?
I don't see any other way out of this impasse unless and until you change this the main economic system. So what is that like? So main economic system is the system in which goods and services are produced and the income is distributed among the general. Unless you change it in such a manner. So what is such a manner? It should be democratic manner. It should be a way where the resources should be utilized in an optimal way. And again, the benefits or the value created in that production process should be fairly in a just manner distributed. As of now, all those critical decisions are taken by very few, and the bulk, the big chunk of this value is taken by them. Just take the example of this COVID situation. So if it is a real issue, the impact, negative impact of COVID should have affected to everyone across the board. It should, I mean, indiscriminately it should have affected. But if you take the statistics of these big corporations and big people, rich people and affluent class, their wealth has gone up. But the poor people wealth has gone down. Why? So that is the reason, because this corrupt and bad, or rather in political terms we call neoliberal economic policies, they serve only the very few. So only way out from this particular impasse is the change in the mainly the production for the economic system together with the political system as well, because the political system just maintain lots of hegemonies with lots of power. That power is utilized to serve that particular field. So therefore both changes are required. Political, it should be democratic and responsible and accountable to the general public. The meantime, what is not seen to the general public is the mode of production. That has to be changed. So where bigger role can be played by the limited liability companies, because things, goods and services are produced in different ways. Individually, maybe by like groups, or maybe by the government. Also state entities also do something. But to great extent, public sector, that is actually we call private sector, that is by the corporations, limited liability companies. Limited liability companies like you and I, the legal person, they have unlimited lifetime, they have enormous power, they can do anything. So that is the place, if you do not bring that into the democratic sphere, so danger, because it's like a double-edged sword. So nowadays you can see these entities are being used here and there to transfer wealth. So that is the danger. So just like if I summarize, the answer or the way out for from this particular impasse is real change in this system. Otherwise, people will have to face lots of negative consequences. They have to suffer a lot, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit of a more on a more easy topic for the general public to understand, and that's the cost of living. I mean, even members of the middle class in Sri Lanka would have already realized that the cost of living is rising very, very fast.
Okay.
Now, one might think that this is all because of the COVID-19 pandemic, because the lockdowns that were imposed, because the whole world is actually suffering at the hands of the COVID-19 pandemic. But judging by the situation in other countries, is this true?
So it's like this. Actually, COVID pandemic situation did not create any inflationary situation in even in other countries also. Actually, because of the COVID, what happens, the aggregate demand, the total demand declined. So therefore, it is unlikely that the prices would go up. But what happened, so when like countries like us, as a solution to this particular pandemic issue, without implementing a kind of plan where the resources are brought back to the production process, simply they printed and released money. So then mismatch, so low production, low demand, and lots of money has been pumped into the economy. So that is the reason why the inflationary impact would be very high, apart from other issues are also there, because the tax policies also favor the rich people, not the poor people, and the corruption. Even in the crisis situation, you hear corruption, mismanagement, frauds, and everything. So if you for the time being forget about all these things, that particular wrong policy directly affected to the prices. There could be other countries as well. But if you take an example across, especially in Europe, was able to manage this situation even with stimulus packages, even releasing money. They release those monies to the poor people or the needy people, and not to the affluent class, and where they wanted to protect. For example, the first thing they wanted to do was to protect the entrepreneurs and the manufacturing process, production process, employment. So this is how. So here I do not see that such policies have been implemented in that way. And take another example of the restriction of importation. So that would be a solution in a way to arrest the problem of foreign reserves. Now we do not have adequate foreign reserves to pay the loans. So within a year, around 7.3 billion US dollars will have to be paid as loans and interest. But we do not have that much foreign reserves, only 4 billion something. So therefore, to some extent, restricting importation based on unnecessary things or essential food stuff would be all right. But they did not do in that way. Even food importation has increased. So you see, so and some of the importation, so which have connection to local production and the re-exportation may have been already curtailed and affected badly. So that is why I am not saying that this is the only country which mismanage the economy. There could be so many other countries where these politics are bad, and even within this neoliberal or capitalistic policies. So I mean, as long as your governance mechanism works in a way, of course, you can hold it on and do manage the things in a fair manner. So in that case, actually we are doing extremely bad situation.
Because especially of the corruption that we're seeing in the administration of this country.
Of course.
Even sadly though, very sadly, even during the time of a pandemic. Doctor, we're going into a short commercial break, but before that, well, now it's quite clear where Sri Lanka stands as a country, even during this COVID-19 pandemic, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, actually. But we saw just a few months ago, ministers, members of parliament coming out and saying, you know, we have enough of money, the government is not, you know, short of any money that we need. And also, we need vehicles to serve the general public. Now, letters of credit aren't being allowed to, I mean, there is a lack of foreign reserves in the country, and of course this is being reflected in how many people are allowed to open letters of credit. So against such a backdrop, either the members of parliament and the ministers who made these statements were unaware of the situation, or they were trying to hoodwink the people, both of which are not good characteristics of a leader. Which is it, do you think?
So of course, first and foremost, it is basically unethical and not morally right thing to do it, this kind of situation, especially. And another thing, with respect to this, the statement making that we have enough money, it has a partial truth. So partial truth means, as far as the local domestic situation is concerned, of course government has a mandate and of course can do and can print money as much as they want, simply disregarding the negative consequences of this thing.
Including inflation, rising cost of living, all of that.
But some ministers and other officials may not have understood the link of just printing money and the earning of foreign exchange in order to import vehicles or any other things. No matter how much money that you have in here, but you need to have earn foreign exchange reserve. So that understanding might have left them to, I mean, basically that is not the real reason. Real reason is actually, even in this situation, they are not ready to sacrifice their facilities,
their
and
luxuries.
their fantasy. That is the real reason.
Well, Doctor, let's cross into a short commercial break. We will be back with more on the other side. After the commercial break, we'll focus on some of the questions sent in to us by our viewers. Stay tuned. You're watching Newsline Live.
News First, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline Live. Dr. Anil, we promised to allow room for some of the questions sent in by our viewers. Now, this reflects some of the questions that the general public do have. Now, when it comes to printing of money, like you said, inflation and the consequences, you said that the government has disregarded these consequences. I got a picture from one of our viewers from a paper article where the State Minister in charge of finances, State Minister Ajit Niwad Kabral, had said that there is no connection between money printing and the depreciation in the rupee. What is your analysis of this?
So, in fact, that statement is somewhat a misleading statement, but it has a partial truth as well. Why? Of course, when money is printed, so it is one of the tasks of the central bank. The central bank has to print money, but it has to be print in accordance with basic principles. So according to the speed at which the goods and services are produced, foreign exchange earnings. So likewise, there are central bank people, officials, they know very well. So what we argue that if money is printed in excess of all those things, so there is a negative consequences, because that money does not go to the production process.
Right.
So that would really inflate the local prices. So his statement, of course, even the local prices goes up, inflation goes up, of course, the depreciation here, I mean the rupee depreciation against the dollar, there will not be a direct impact. But when the prices go up, actually local value also goes up. That is also kind of depreciation. So when the local value goes up, the prices go up. I mean, basically inflation goes up. So in a long run, like indirectly, what would happen? We can hold this particular statement if we have adequate foreign reserves to meet any amount of dollars that we need for importation and whatever the things that we need, basically, and repayment of loans. We don't have it. So therefore, how do we earn this thing? So from exportation. So when your inflation goes up and the production process does not take place in that manner, and this importation restriction and all those things indirectly negatively affect to the exportation as well. So that is why I just told you, indirectly there is an impact. So when the long run, the foreign exchange earnings goes down, of course our rupee will be depreciated, and that particular depreciation can happen two ways. That is, one is artificial, like artificial in the sense forcefully with the central bank involvement, you can purposefully depreciate, and when the demand for foreign currencies goes up, whereas no supply adequately are earning, automatically when the exchange rate is left to function freely, it depreciates. So therefore I would like to say that that statement is a partially misleading statement.
Doctor, we all wonder on when fuel prices will increase again, because the general practice in Sri Lanka is fuel prices increase, prices of all other essential goods increase subsequently. There's a question in from one of our viewers. Now I know that we don't have a fuel pricing formula, so speculating on fuel pricing is almost as hard as speculating as if the world would end tomorrow. So the question really is there a risk of fuel prices increasing again anytime soon?
There would be, but it depends. Like the things like fuel prices, apart from other essential commodities and things. So as you said correctly, it has connection to other goods and services. Of course, when the fuel prices are increased, the prices of other goods and services also will increase. I can't say categorically that, like, by taking into account the present economic conditions and the fuel supply and the price level, the international price level, and it will go up. But from the government side, it is a fact that it faces a kind of crisis. Not only the external debt repayment and other thing, internally also there is a problem. So government revenue as a percentage of GDP has declined in our history. So in 2020 it was the lowest, it is 9 point something. So without having adequate revenue for the government will not be able to meet its expenses. So already the budget deficit in 2020 has gone up to 14%. So there is a limit for the government. Borrowing is one, but so through these kind of means, indirect taxes, the increasing fuel prices and other things would be an easy avenue for the government. Because of that reason, there is a great chance that government may touch it, because they may come out with 101 excuses. As of now, to be honest, if you compare the fuel prices within the region compared to few countries and compared to other countries, our fuel price may be relatively low. That is maybe due to the low cost of production and other factors, and not because that the government has reduced taxes. Already we have tax, so huge amount. But this is a very comfortable avenue for the government to increase the revenue. So there is a chance. But the problem is, if you do this thing without maintaining other checks and balances and looking at the other aspects of the economy, of course, great chance is there that the price level would go up.
There is another question from one of our viewers, and this relates to the policy decision that the government has taken to completely ban the import of chemical fertilizers to the country. It's not on that decision per se, but I'd like to relate this question to you like this. It's important that the general public are aware of what is happening in Sri Lanka financially. What are the decisions? How can we predict? Will the import ban be lifted anytime soon? So this information it's very important that the general public knows what the government is going to do in the future to solve these economic problems. But however, time and time again we have seen the government saying things like, the fuel prices will be reduced when Basil Rajapaksa enters parliament. Then when the journalist questioned him, how is that going to happen? No, you wait and see, we will show you how it's done. But of course these things are very rarely done. So on these matters also, we saw the head of the executive making a statement recently that the money saved from the import of chemical fertilizer, since there's a ban right now. So all this money saved, up to about 80 billion rupees, I believe, was somewhere around $400 million US, will be given to the farmers of Sri Lanka. Now, no details on how this will be done. Will this be included in the Samruddhi banks, or will this be given instead of the fertilizer subsidy? What about this decision? Is this a financially sound decision? Do you see it in that light?
I don't think that that's a financially sound decision. I'm also confused about this particular decision, why that particular decision was taken without thinking of the consequences. But of course, one reason could be there for the time being, they want to stop all these dollar leakage avenues. But stopping the fertilizer, of course, I am pretty much willing to accept a policy of producing fertilizer in Sri Lanka, which is maybe organic or whatever. That's really good. But overnight, if you just stop it, so that would definitely affect to agriculture in so many ways. So then it would affect to the agriculture in the sense the production goes down. So that is the bad part of the story. I don't understand with like any one of these government can't understand this particular reality. So all of a sudden we stop. So the plants, if you do not give the fertilizer at the right time, so there is no point of even importing later on. I suspect to some extent, so immediately, so taking this particular decision of just banning fertilizer, and another decision came to import organic fertilizer. Therefore, the argument of just protecting foreign exchange is also gone, because on one hand you stop it, and another hand you are going to import something else. So that's not going to be served. So what I suspect that there could be some hidden agendas. Maybe we do not know because I do not have much fact, but categorically I can say that this restriction of something like this, like all of a sudden, would negatively affect to the agriculture. The danger is not that you are the farmers losing their day-to-day or their income in the short run. In the long run, that may be very much detrimental to the food security of a country, because no country in this world has just maintained their stance and become a big country or developing country unless they have a very strong policy on food, especially the food security and adequacy of food. So maybe this may be connected to their future plans or strategies of grabbing the land that farmers own in future, because the farmers, they are struggling with this thing. With a little income, if they can't survive or cultivate their farm or the lands in future, what is the option? They give it up, they sell all these things. Meantime, the government can keep all the companies, limited liability companies, like in the case of Selim Diwar and all these, just to grab this land. Those companies would issue shares on the Colombo Stock Exchange, and likewise the farmers can sell this land and take some income, can become the employees of those companies, unless this would be balanced in a just manner. So that is a kind of great risk, I feel.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us on our show and clarifying these matters to the public. However, there is it is quite a challenge to bring clarity to these matters, because some might wonder if the entire objective here is to confuse us if they can't convince us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us on our show once again, and thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning into Newsline, as you always do. Some good news coming your way as from Monday on. Your usual host, Farash Agatali, will be back. He already has arrived in Sri Lanka, completed his quarantine period. He'll be back up and early on Monday to host Newsline for you. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.